The Galactic Council chamber was a vast, domed amphitheater, its towering walls adorned with the emblems and colors of the most powerful civilizations in the known universe. Today, the chamber hummed with an air of anticipation as the Council's most esteemed members convened for an emergency session. At the center of the circular chamber, the holographic display flickered to life, revealing a three-dimensional projection of the galaxy. Glittering stars dotted the endless void, their luminous dance interrupted by the pulsing beacons that mark the territories of the Galactic Council's member worlds. Striding to the dais, the venerable Archon Valeria, chairperson of the Council, raised a slender hand, commanding the attention of the assembled delegates. Honored representatives, I have called you here today to discuss a most intriguing discovery. Her voice, though gentle, carried a weight of authority that silenced the murmuring chamber. With a subtle gesture, Valeria summoned a new feature to the galactic display, a bright blue dot, pulsing intermittently near the outer rim of the Council's dominion. This uncharted planet was recently detected by our long-range scanners. Its energy signature is unlike anything we have encountered before, and it appears to be the product of a civilization previously unknown to us. A hush fell over the delegates as they studied the anomalous blip on the galactic map. Valeria continued, her eyes sweeping across the assembly. We have dispatched a scout ship to investigate this world and make first contact. Commander Jackson and his crew are even now en route, poised to uncover the secrets of this newfound species. At the mention of Jackson's name, a tall, angular figure rose from the front row. Clad in the burnished gold and crimson of the Helian Dominion, Archon Kiran stepped forward, his features etched with a mixture of curiosity and caution. Archon Valeria, I commend you for your proactive stance in this matter, Kiran began, his baritone voice resonating through the chamber. However, I must voice my concerns. Our records indicate that the region surrounding this uncharted planet is contested, with several smaller civilizations vying for dominance. Sending a single scout ship, no matter how capable, could be seen as an act of aggression by these fledgling powers. Valeria inclined her head slightly, acknowledging Kiran's point. Your concerns are valid, Archon. Yet, we cannot ignore the potential this discovery holds. A new species, capable of producing such a remarkable energy signature, could hold the key to unlocking fresh avenues of technological and cultural exchange. The benefits to the Galactic Council could be immense. Kiran's brow furrowed, his lips pressed into a thin line. I do not dispute the potential gains, Archon, but we must consider the risks as well. Should this new civilization prove to be hostile or unwilling to join our alliance, the repercussions could be catastrophic. We cannot afford to antagonize them, nor can we allow them to fall under the sway of our rivals. The chamber erupted in a chorus of murmurs and hushed discussions as the delegates grappled with Kiran's words. Valeria raised her hand, silencing the din. I understand your trepidation, Archon Kiran. However, I believe the potential rewards far outweigh the risks. We cannot allow this opportunity to slip through our fingers. Striding to the edge of the dais, Valeria fixed the assembly with a steadfast gaze. The scout ship has already been dispatched, and Commander Jackson has been instructed to proceed with the utmost caution and diplomacy. He understands the delicate nature of this first contact, and he will do everything in his power to establish peaceful relations with this new civilization. Kiran opened his mouth to protest, but Valeria raised a hand, silencing him. I know your concerns, Archon, and I promise you they will be taken into account. But for now, we must have faith in our emissaries and the potential that this discovery holds. The future of the Galactic Council may very well hinge on the outcome of this mission. The chamber fell silent, the delegates exchanging uneasy glances as they contemplated the gravity of Valeria's words. Finally, one by one, they nodded in reluctant acquiescence, understanding that the die had been cast. The Galactic Council was about to embark on a journey that would test the very foundations of their interstellar alliance. As the holographic display flickered and dimmed, Valeria turned and strode from the dais, her regal bearing masking the deep well of trepidation that burned within her. For the first time in her long tenure, the future of the Galactic Council felt uncertain, and the fate of a previously unknown world now rested in the hands of her most trusted emissary. The sleek, silver-hulled scout ship glided silently through the void, its powerful engines propelling it ever closer to the mysterious blue-green planet that had captured the attention of the Galactic Council. On board, Commander Jackson stood at the fore of the bridge, his keen eyes scanning the readouts that flickered across the holo displays. "Approach the planet at half-sublight speed," Jackson commanded, his voice calm and measured. "I want a full spectrum analysis before we initiate first contact." The pilot, a young Vosgian named Zell, acknowledged the order with a curt nod, his deft fingers dancing across the navigation controls. Slowly, the scout ship drew nearer, its sensitive instruments probing the planet's atmosphere and surface. Jackson studied the incoming data, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Fascinating," he murmured, his gaze fixed on the holographic representation of the planet. "Oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere, surface temperatures ranging from -60 to 60 degrees Celsius, and an abundance of liquid water. This world is remarkably similar to our own homeworlds." Zell glanced up from his station, his large, luminous eyes gleaming with curiosity. "Do you believe this planet is inhabited, Commander?" Jackson nodded, his expression pensive. "The energy signature we detected is unlike anything in our database. There are clear signs of technological development, albeit primitive compared to our own. I believe we are on the verge of making first contact with a new sentient species." The bridge crew fell silent, the weight of Jackson's words hanging in the air. First contact was always a delicate, momentous occasion, a pivotal event that could shape the course of a civilization's future. Jackson understood the gravity of the situation, and he knew that every decision he made from this point forward would be scrutinized by the Galactic Council. "Prepare a landing party," he said, his gaze sweeping across the bridge. "I want a diplomatic team, linguists, cultural specialists, and a small contingent of security personnel. We'll approach the planet's surface with caution and respect, and make every effort to establish peaceful relations with its inhabitants." As the crew set about their tasks, Jackson turned his attention back to the holographic projection, his mind racing with possibilities. What would this new species be like? Would they be receptive to the prospect of joining the Galactic Council, or would they view the emissaries as a threat to their sovereignty? The descent to the planet's surface was a tense affair, with the scout ship maneuvering through a series of complex atmospheric currents before settling gently on a vast, grassy plain. Jackson and his team, clad in their formal diplomatic attire, disembarked cautiously, their senses on high alert. The air was crisp and fragrant, the horizon dotted with towering, jagged mountains and sprawling forests. In the distance, Jackson could see signs of human habitation, scattered settlements, and what appeared to be primitive roadways. "Fan out and establish a perimeter," Jackson ordered, his gaze scanning the surrounding landscape. "Let's see if we can make peaceful contact with the locals." The security personnel fanned out, their energy weapons at the ready, while the linguists and cultural specialists moved forward with caution, their hands raised in a gesture of peace. Jackson watched, his heart pounding with anticipation, as the first tentative interactions began. To his surprise, the human inhabitants, rather than fleeing in fear, approached the diplomatic team with a mixture of curiosity and wariness. Their language, though unfamiliar, seemed to convey a sense of cautious engagement, and Jackson's linguists quickly set about the task of establishing basic communication. As the initial exchanges unfolded, Jackson couldn't help but be struck by the sheer diversity of the human species. Their physical appearances ranged from tall and lithe to short and stocky, their skin tones spanning a broad spectrum of hues. And their clothing, while primitive, displayed a remarkable creativity and individuality. Yet, despite these differences, there was an undeniable sense of unity and purpose among the humans, a cohesion that Jackson had not expected to find in a species at such an early stage of development. As the communication barriers began to crumble, he realized that these people were far more complex and sophisticated than the Council's initial assessments had suggested. Jackson's thoughts were interrupted by the approach of a human, a tall, broad-shouldered individual with a commanding presence. The man's eyes narrowed as he regarded the diplomatic team, and Jackson could sense an underlying tension in the air. "Greetings," Jackson said, extending his hand in a gesture of goodwill. "I am Commander Jackson, representative of the Galactic Council. We come in peace, seeking to establish friendly relations with your people." The human eyed Jackson's outstretched hand with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion, and for a moment, Jackson wondered if he had made a grave misstep. But then, the man's features softened, and he grasped Jackson's hand firmly. "I am President Michael Johnson," the human said, his voice resonating with a quiet strength. "Welcome to Earth. I hope you are prepared for the unexpected, Commander Jackson, for our world is unlike any you have ever encountered." Commander Jackson's initial meeting with President Michael Johnson had left him intrigued, and if he was being honest, more than a little unsettled. The human leader's words, "Our world is unlike any you have ever encountered," echoed in Jackson's mind as he stood before the Galactic Council, recounting the details of his first contact with the people of Earth. The humans, or Earthlings as they call themselves, are a remarkably complex and resilient species, Jackson reported, his gaze sweeping across the assembled delegates. "They possess a level of unity and ingenuity that I did not anticipate, given their seemingly primitive technological state." Archon Kiran, his brow furrowed in contemplation, leaned forward in his seat. "Elaborate, Commander. What precisely did you observe that led you to this assessment?" Jackson took a moment to gather his thoughts, mindful of the weight of his words. "During our initial interactions, the Earthlings demonstrated a remarkable capacity for communication and cooperation. Their language, while foreign to us, is nuanced and expressive, allowing for efficient exchange of information and ideas." He paused, his gaze settling on Valeria, the Archon who had spearheaded this mission. More notably, the Earthlings displayed a deep sense of collective identity and purpose. President Johnson, their elected leader, spoke on behalf of his entire species, and the people seemed to defer to his authority with a level of respect and unity that is rare even among our own member civilizations. Kiran leaned back in his seat, his expression pensive. "Interesting. And how did the Earthlings respond to your overtures of diplomacy and potential integration into the Galactic Council?" Jackson's lips thinned into a wry smile. "That, Archon Kiran, is where things became unexpectedly complicated. When I presented the Earthlings with the prospect of joining our interstellar alliance, they were receptive at first, expressing a genuine interest in establishing friendly relations with the broader galactic community." He paused, his eyes narrowing. "However, as we delved into the specifics of integration, the terms of membership, the obligations and responsibilities that would come with it, the Earthlings became increasingly resistant and, dare I say, defiant." The chamber erupted in a cacophony of murmurs and hushed discussions, the delegates clearly taken aback by Jackson's words. Valeria raised a hand, silencing the din. "Explain further, Commander. What precisely did the Earthlings object to?" Jackson straightened his shoulders, his gaze unwavering. "The Earthlings expressed a deep-seated desire for self-determination and sovereignty. They were unwilling to cede any measure of autonomy to the Galactic Council, even in exchange for the technological and economic benefits of membership." Kiran's eyes narrowed, a hint of frustration creeping into his voice. "Surely they must understand the advantages of joining our alliance. The resources, the protection, the access to knowledge and innovation that we could provide. How could they refuse such an offer?" Jackson shook his head slowly. "That is precisely the crux of the matter, Archon. The Earthlings do not see membership in the Galactic Council as an advantage. In their eyes, it would be a surrender of their hard-won independence and the values they hold dear." Valeria raised a hand, silencing the renewed murmurs. "This is most unexpected. Have you been able to ascertain the reason for this staunch resistance? Jackson nodded, his expression grave. According to President Johnson, the Earthlings have a long and tumultuous history of conflict, both within their own species and with other civilizations that have attempted to subjugate them. They view any attempt at external control or domination as a threat to the very foundations of their society. The chamber fell silent, the delegates exchanging uneasy glances. Jackson took a deep breath, his next words measured and deliberate. I believe we have severely underestimated the Earthlings, both in their capabilities and their resolve. They are a proud, resourceful people, and they have made it abundantly clear that they have no intention of surrendering their autonomy, even in the face of our technological and military superiority. Kiran's brow furrowed, his lips pressed into a thin line. Then what do you propose, Commander? If the Earthlings refuse to cooperate, how do we proceed? Surely we cannot simply allow them to remain outside the Galactic Council, potentially aligning themselves with our rivals. Jackson met Kiran's gaze unflinchingly. That is precisely the dilemma we face, Archon. The Earthlings have made it clear that they will not be coerced or intimidated. Any attempt to force their hand may very well result in open conflict, the consequences of which I shudder to imagine. The chamber fell silent, the weight of Jackson's words hanging heavy in the air. Valeria, her expression pensive, rose from her seat, her gaze sweeping across the assembled delegates. Then we must tread carefully, my friends. The future of the Galactic Council may very well hinge on how we navigate this delicate situation. We cannot afford to underestimate the Earthlings again. The stakes are far too high. As the delegates murmured their assent, Jackson felt a growing sense of unease. The discovery of Earth had opened a Pandora's box, and the Galactic Council was now faced with a challenge unlike any it had ever encountered. The fate of both civilizations now hung in the balance. The news of the Galactic Council's overtures to the people of Earth spread like wildfire, igniting a firestorm of debate and controversy across the globe. In the halls of power and on the streets of every major city, the question of how to respond to this unprecedented first contact became the subject of intense discussion and disagreement. President Michael Johnson, having returned from his initial meeting with Commander Jackson, convened an emergency session of the United Nations Security Council, his face etched with a mixture of determination and concern. Esteemed colleagues, he began, his voice grave yet resolute, the time has come for us to make a decision that will shape the course of our species for generations to come. The Galactic Council has made it clear that they wish to incorporate Earth into their interstellar alliance, and they have made promises of technological and economic advancement that are difficult to ignore. Johnson paused, his gaze sweeping across the assembled representatives. However, we must not be blinded by the temptation of these potential benefits. The Galactic Council's terms of integration would require us to cede a significant degree of our sovereignty and autonomy, a price that I believe the vast majority of the human race, are unwilling to pay. A murmur of agreement rippled through the chamber, and Johnson seized the moment, his voice rising with conviction. We have fought long and hard to establish the principles of self-determination and freedom that define our species. We have overcome countless challenges, both natural and man-made, to forge a future of our own making. And now, when faced with the prospect of joining this so-called Galactic Council, we are expected to simply surrender that hard-won independence. Johnson's fist slammed against the table, the sound echoing through the chamber. I say no. This is our world, our home, and we will not relinquish it to any outside power, no matter how technologically advanced or economically tempting their offer may be. The representatives erupted in a thunderous round of applause, their faces alight with a newfound sense of unity and purpose. Johnson raised a hand, silencing the din. It is clear to me, and I hope to all of you, that the only acceptable course of action is for Earth to reject the Galactic Council's overtures and assert our sovereignty as a species. We will not be cowed, we will not be intimidated, and we will not be conquered. The chamber erupted once more, the delegates rising to their feet in a standing ovation. As the applause subsided, Johnson continued, his gaze unwavering. To that end, I have proposed a resolution that will be put to a vote immediately. This resolution will formally declare Earth's independence from any and all outside interference or control, and it will call upon the member nations of the United Nations to commit the full measure of their resources and military might to the defense of our homeworld. The tension in the chamber was palpable as the delegates considered the gravity of Johnson's words. Finally, one by one, they began to add their names to the resolution, their signatures solidifying the human race's defiant stand against the Galactic Council's overtures. Within hours, the news of Earth's declaration of independence had spread across the globe, sparking a wave of patriotic fervor and unbridled determination. In the streets of major cities, crowds gathered to cheer and celebrate, their voices raised in a chorus of defiance. Earth will not be subjugated, they chanted, their fists pumping the air in a symbol of unyielding resolve. The Galactic Council, stunned by the unexpected turn of events, convened an emergency session to discuss the implications of the Earthlings' actions. Commander Jackson, his expression grim, stood before the assembled delegates, outlining the human race's unwavering refusal to surrender their sovereignty. The Earthlings have made it abundantly clear that they will not be coerced or intimidated, Jackson reported, his voice tinged with a hint of unease. They have united under the banner of independence, and they have committed the full measure of their resources to defending their homeworld against any attempt at subjugation. Archon Kiran, his brow furrowed in a mixture of frustration and concern, rose from his seat, his gaze fixed on Jackson. This is most unexpected, Commander. Surely the Earthlings must understand the benefits of joining our alliance. What could possibly motivate them to take such a defiant stance? Jackson met Kiran's gaze unflinchingly. According to President Johnson, the Earthlings have a deep-seated mistrust of any form of external control or domination. They have a history of conflict and struggle, both within their own species and against those who have sought to subjugate them. To them, the loss of sovereignty is a price they are simply unwilling to pay. Valeria, her expression pensive, raised a hand, silencing the murmurs that had begun to ripple through the chamber. Then we must proceed with the utmost caution, Archon Kiran. The Earthlings have made their position clear, and any attempt to force their hand may very well result in open conflict, a conflict that could have devastating consequences for both our civilizations. Kiran's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing. But we cannot simply allow them to remain outside the Galactic Council, Archon Valeria. The potential threat they pose, both to our own interests and to the stability of the known galaxy, is far too great to ignore. Valeria held up a hand, her gaze unwavering. I understand your concerns, Archon, but we must explore every possible avenue of diplomacy before even considering the use of force. The Earthlings have proven themselves to be a formidable and resourceful species. We cannot afford to underestimate them again. The chamber fell silent, the weight of Valeria's words hanging heavy in the air. Jackson watched, his heart heavy with trepidation, as the Galactic Council grappled with the implications of Earth's defiant stand. The future, he realized, had become increasingly uncertain for both their civilizations. The Galactic Council's chambers echoed with the din of heated debate as the delegates grappled with the implications of Earth's defiant stand. Archon Kiran, his brow furrowed in frustration, paced the days, his voice rising with each passing moment. We cannot simply allow the Earthlings to defy us in this manner. Their refusal to join our alliance poses a grave threat to the stability and security of the known galaxy. We must take decisive action to bring them into the fold, by force if necessary. Valeria raised a hand, her expression stern. Archon Kiran, I understand your concerns, but we must proceed with caution. The Earthlings have proven to be a formidable and resourceful species. Any attempt to subjugate them by force could have catastrophic consequences. Kiran whirled to face Valeria, his eyes narrowed. And what would you have us do, Archon? Allow them to remain beyond our influence, potentially aligning themselves with our rivals. We cannot afford such a risk, not when the very foundations of the Galactic Council are at stake. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of murmurs and heated exchanges as the delegates debated the merits of Kiran's proposal. Jackson, who had been silent throughout the discussion, stepped forward, his gaze sweeping across the assembly. Esteemed Archons, I must caution against a hasty decision to invade the Earthlings' homeworld. Based on my observations, they are a tenacious and resourceful species, more than capable of mounting a fierce resistance against our superior technology and firepower. Kiran's lips curled into a disdainful sneer. Your concerns are duly noted, Commander, but we cannot afford to be cowed by the primitive nature of these Earthlings. Our might is unmatched. They will have no choice but to submit to our will. Valeria raised a hand, her expression grave. Archon Kiran, I must implore you to reconsider. The risks of such an action are simply too great. We have no way of knowing the full extent of the Earthlings' capabilities, and any misstep could have devastating consequences for our entire civilization. Kiran's jaw tightened, his eyes glinting with a steely determination. Then so be it, Archon Valeria. The decision has been made. I will personally oversee the deployment of our forces to the Earthlings' homeworld. We shall bring them into the Galactic Council by any means necessary. As the chamber erupted in a renewed flurry of debate, Jackson felt a growing sense of unease. He had seen the Earthlings' resolve, their unwavering commitment to their independence, and he knew that the Galactic Council was underestimating them once again. Stepping forward, Jackson cleared his throat, his voice cutting through the din. Esteemed Archons, I must respectfully disagree with this course of action. I believe that a diplomatic solution is still possible, and that we should exhaust every avenue of negotiation before resorting to military force. Kiran's eyes narrowed, his lips curling into a sneer. Your concerns have been noted, Commander. However, the decision has been made. The invasion will proceed as planned. Valeria's gaze met Jackson's, and in that moment, he saw a flicker of doubt in her eyes. Commander, I understand your reservations, but you must understand the gravity of this situation. The stability of the Galactic Council is at stake. We cannot afford to appear weak in the face of this defiance. Jackson nodded, his expression grim. I understand, Archon, but I fear that this decision may have consequences that none of us can foresee. The Earthlings have proven their mettle, and I believe that they will fight with a ferocity that will catch us off guard. Valeria's lips pressed into a thin line, her brow furrowed in thought. Then you must ensure that our forces are prepared, Commander. Impress upon them the need for caution and diplomacy, even in the face of potential conflict. Jackson nodded, his expression resolute. I will do my utmost, Archon, but I fear that the die has already been cast. The Galactic Council is about to engage in a conflict that may very well determine the fate of both our civilizations. As Jackson turned and strode from the chamber, the weight of his words hung heavy in the air. The Galactic Council, in its hubris, had underestimated the Earthlings once too often, and now they were poised to pay the price. In the days that followed, the Galactic Armada amassed at the edge of the Earth's solar system, its ships gleaming in the void of space. Jackson, his expression grave, stood on the bridge of the flagship, his gaze fixed on the distant blue-green planet that had captured the Council's attention. Prepare to initiate the invasion, he murmured, his voice tinged with a hint of trepidation. May the Celestials watch over us all. As the galactic forces surged forward, Jackson couldn't help but wonder if they were truly prepared for the storm that was about to break over the unsuspecting world of Earth. The galactic invasion force descended upon the planet Earth with all the might and fury of a cosmic storm, its sleek, angular warships blotting out the sun as they swept across the skies. From the bridge of the flagship, Commander Jackson watched the unfolding events with a mixture of trepidation and grim determination. Despite the Council's overwhelming technological and military superiority, the Earthlings had proven to be far more resilient and resourceful than anticipated. As the galactic forces began their systematic bombardment of the planet's key strategic targets, they were met with a fierce and relentless resistance. Jackson's brow furrowed as he studied the incoming tactical reports. "How is this possible?" he murmured, his voice tinged with a hint of disbelief. "Our forces are supposed to be unstoppable. Yet the Earthlings seem to be anticipating our every move." The communications officer, a young Vosgian named Zell, glanced up from her station, her eyes wide with concern. "Commander, the Earthlings are employing advanced countermeasures and guerrilla tactics that are severely disrupting our offensive. They appear to have a deep understanding of their own terrain and are exploiting it with ruthless efficiency." Jackson's lips pressed into a thin line as he considered Zell's words. It was true. The Earthlings, rather than cowering in the face of the galactic onslaught, had risen to the occasion with a fervor and tenacity that defied all expectations. Across the planet, ragtag bands of human fighters, led by the charismatic rebel leader Emily Larson, were wreaking havoc on the galactic invaders. They struck swiftly and with surgical precision, targeting supply lines, communication hubs, and even the flagship's own defensive squadrons. "How are they doing this?" Jackson muttered, his gaze fixed on the tactical displays. "Their technology is centuries behind ours, yet they're matching us move for move." Zell hesitated, her fingers dancing across her console. "According to our intelligence, the Earthlings are employing a combination of innovative tactics, superior knowledge of their home terrain, and a level of coordination and cooperation that we've never encountered before." Jackson's eyes narrowed as he considered this. Cooperation. Of course. He straightened his shoulders, his expression hardening. The Earthlings' strength lies not in their technology, but in their unity. They are fighting as a single, cohesive force, driven by a common purpose and an unwavering determination to defend their homeworld. The realization hit him like a thunderbolt, and Jackson felt a newfound respect and a twinge of trepidation for the species he had been sent to subdue. "Zell, contact Archon Valyria immediately. Inform her that we are facing a formidable adversary, one that will not be easily broken." Zell nodded, her fingers flying across the console as she relayed the urgent message. Jackson turned his attention back to the tactical displays, his mind racing. "If we cannot defeat them through conventional means, then we must find another way." His gaze hardened with resolve. "Zell, order our forces to pull back and regroup. We need to reevaluate our strategy, and quickly." As the galactic warships began to disengage, the Earthlings seized the opportunity, launching a series of devastating counterattacks that crippled the invaders' forces. The skies above Earth erupted in a dazzling display of laser fire and missile barrages as the human resistance fighters pushed the galactic invaders to the brink of collapse. In the chaos, Emily Larson, her face smudged with soot and her eyes burning with a fierce determination, rallied her comrades, her voice carrying across the battlefield. "This is our moment, people. We have the galactic bastards on the run. Now is the time to strike, to show them the true power of the human spirit." The crowd erupted in a roar of approval, their fists pumping the air as they charged into the fray. Larson grinned, her teeth bared in a feral smile. "For Earth, for our freedom." As the human forces pressed their advantage, Jackson watched from the flagship's bridge, his expression a mix of awe and trepidation. "They're not just fighting for their lives," he murmured, his gaze fixed on the unfolding battle. "They're fighting for something greater, for their very identity as a species." Zell glanced up from her station, her eyes wide with concern. "Commander, the galactic forces are sustaining heavy casualties. If we don't withdraw soon, we risk the complete annihilation of our fleet." Jackson nodded, his jaw tightening. "Initiate a full retreat, Zell. We need to regroup and rethink our strategy. This battle has proven that the Earthlings are far more formidable than we ever imagined." As the galactic warships turned and flowed into the void of space, Jackson couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. The Earthlings had shown themselves to be a force to be reckoned with, and he knew that the Galactic Council had severely underestimated the power of their unity and determination. The future, he realized, had become increasingly uncertain. The fate of both civilizations now hung in the balance, and Jackson could only hope that the Council would have the wisdom to tread carefully in the days to come. The retreat of the Galactic Invasion Force was a tense and chaotic affair, with the flagship and its battered fleet limping through the void of space, pursued by the relentless counterattacks of the human resistance fighters. From the bridge, Commander Jackson watched the tactical displays with a growing sense of unease. The Earthlings' tenacity and coordination had caught the Galactic Council's forces off guard, and the losses they had sustained were staggering. Zell, the young Vosian communications officer, hurried to Jackson's side, her expression grave. "Commander, we're losing vessels faster than we can disengage. The Earthlings are exploiting every weakness in our defenses." Jackson's jaw tightened as he considered the situation. "Increase the rear shields and order our fighters to provide cover for the retreating ships. We need to buy time to make the jump to hyperspace." Zell nodded and relayed the orders, her fingers dancing across the console. Jackson turned his gaze back to the tactical displays, his brow furrowed in concentration. "They're not just fighting for their lives, Zell," he murmured, his voice tinged with a hint of awe. "They're fighting for something more, for their very identity as a species." Zell glanced up, her eyes widening. "You mean their desire for independence?" Jackson nodded, his expression grim. "The Earthlings have made it abundantly clear that they will not surrender their sovereignty, no matter the cost. And now they're proving the depth of their commitment, even against our superior technology and firepower." The bridge erupted in a series of urgent alerts as the Earthlings continued their relentless assault. Jackson's gaze hardened as he watched the battered galactic ships struggle to maintain their formation. "Helm, prepare the jump to hyperspace. We need to get out of this system before we lose any more vessels." As the flagship's engines roared to life, Jackson caught a glimpse of the blue-green planet that had sparked this entire conflict. The sight of the Earthlings' homeworld, battered but resilient, filled him with a newfound sense of respect and trepidation. "We've underestimated them once too often, Zell," he murmured, his eyes narrowing. "And now the consequences of our arrogance are becoming painfully clear." Back on Earth, the human resistance fighters, led by the indomitable Emily Larson, were reveling in their unexpected victory. As the galactic warships retreated into the void, a roar of triumph echoed across the devastated landscapes, the people's spirits buoyed by the knowledge that they had stood their ground against an overwhelming foe. Larson, her face flushed with exhilaration, raised a clenched fist, her voice ringing out across the battlefield. "This is just the beginning, my friends. The Galactic Council has tasted the strength of the human spirit, and they will think twice before daring to challenge us again." The crowd erupted in a thunderous cheer, their voices raised in a chorus of defiance. Larson grinned, her eyes gleaming with a fierce determination. "Now, we take the fight to them. We will not rest until the Galactic Council recognizes our right to self-determination and leaves our homeworld for good." As the human forces began to regroup and plan their next move, the news of their unexpected victory spread like wildfire across the globe. In the halls of power, the leaders of Earth's nations convened emergency meetings, their expressions a mix of relief, pride, and apprehension. President Michael Johnson, his brow furrowed in deep thought, addressed the assembled representatives, his voice grave yet resolute. "Today, we have proven to the Galactic Council that the human spirit cannot be broken. We have fought against overwhelming odds and emerged victorious, and now we must prepare for the challenges that lie ahead." He paused, his gaze sweeping across the room. "Make no mistake, our struggle is far from over. The Galactic Council will not simply accept defeat. They will regroup, they will retaliate, and they will stop at nothing to bring us under their control." The representatives murmured in agreement, the weight of Johnson's words hanging heavy in the air. The president continued, his expression hardening. "But we will not be cowed. We will stand firm in our commitment to our independence and our freedom. We will use every resource at our disposal to defend our homeworld and our way of life." A round of applause erupted, the delegates rising to their feet in a show of unwavering support. Johnson raised a hand, silencing the din. "The path ahead will not be easy, my friends. The Galactic Council possesses far greater technological and military might than we can hope to match. But we have something they do not: the unbreakable bond of our shared humanity and the determination to shape our own destiny." The representatives cheered once more, their faces alight with a newfound sense of purpose. Johnson smiled, his expression resolute. "Together, we will forge a future where the people of Earth are masters of our own fate. And when the Galactic Council returns, they will find that we are more than ready to face them." As the meeting adjourned, the delegates filed out, their steps quickened by a renewed sense of urgency. The tide had turned, but the true test was yet to come, and the people of Earth were more than willing to rise to the challenge. The news of the Galactic Council's failed invasion of Earth sent shockwaves through the corridors of power across the known galaxy. The once unthinkable had occurred. A young, seemingly primitive species had not only withstood the might of the galactic forces, but had inflicted a humiliating defeat upon them. As the Galactic Council convened an emergency session to discuss the implications of this stunning reversal, the people of Earth were celebrating a hard-won victory, their spirits buoyed by a newfound sense of pride and determination. At the center of this momentous occasion stood President Michael Johnson, his expression a mixture of relief and resolute conviction. Addressing the United Nations General Assembly, he spoke with a resonance that echoed across the globe. "My fellow Earthlings, today we have proven to the Galactic Council and to the entire galaxy that the human spirit cannot be broken. We have stood our ground against overwhelming odds and emerged victorious. And in doing so, we have secured our rightful place as a sovereign species, free to chart our own course in the stars." The chamber erupted in thunderous applause, the delegates rising to their feet in a display of unwavering support. Johnson raised a hand, silencing the din, and continued, his voice steady and resolute. "But make no mistake, our struggle is far from over. The Galactic Council will not simply accept defeat. They will regroup, they will retaliate, and they will stop at nothing to bring us under their control. We must remain vigilant, we must continue to strengthen our defenses, and we must be prepared to defend our freedom at any cost." Across the globe, the people of Earth listened with rapt attention, their hearts swelling with pride and determination. In the streets of major cities, crowds gathered to cheer and celebrate, their voices raised in a chorus of defiance. "Earth will not be subjugated," they chanted, their fists pumping the air in a symbol of unyielding resolve. As the Galactic Council grappled with the implications of their defeat, the Archons found themselves faced with a dilemma that threatened to tear their fragile alliance asunder. Archon Kiran, his brow furrowed in a mixture of frustration and begrudging respect, rose from his seat, his gaze fixed on Archon Valeria. "We cannot simply allow the Earthlings to remain outside the Galactic Council, Valeria. Their very existence poses a grave threat to the stability and security of the known galaxy. We must find a way to bring them under our control, by any means necessary." Valeria held up a hand, her expression stern. "Archon Kiran, I understand your concerns, but you must realize that the circumstances have changed. The Earthlings have proven themselves to be a formidable and resourceful species, one that will not be cowed by our might or intimidated by our demands." Kiran's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing. "Then what do you propose, Valeria?" "That we simply accept their defiance and allow them to continue to threaten the very foundations of our alliance." Valeria's gaze swept across the chamber, her expression pensive. "I believe that the only viable path forward is to recognize the Earthlings as a sovereign species and to establish a new, mutually beneficial relationship with them." The chamber erupted in a cacophony of murmurs and hushed discussions, the delegates clearly taken aback by Valeria's words. Kiran rose to his feet, his face flushed with indignation. "You would have us surrender to these primitives?" He spat, his voice dripping with disdain. "Valeria, you are jeopardizing the very future of the Galactic Council." Valeria raised a hand, her expression unwavering. "I am doing no such thing, Archon. I am simply acknowledging the reality of the situation. The Earthlings have proven themselves to be our equals, and we must treat them as such if we are to maintain the stability and prosperity of the known galaxy." Kiran opened his mouth to protest, but Valeria cut him off, her voice firm and unyielding. "The decision has been made. The Galactic Council will recognize the sovereignty of the planet Earth and establish formal diplomatic relations with its people. We will offer them the opportunity to join our alliance as equals, with all the rights and responsibilities that come with such a partnership." The chamber fell silent, the delegates exchanging uneasy glances. Kiran, his face flushed with barely contained rage, slowly retook his seat, his jaw clenched tight. In the days that followed, the Galactic Council's historic decision was met with a mix of celebration and cautious optimism across the planet Earth. President Johnson, his expression calm and resolute, addressed his people with a message of unity and hope. "My fellow Earthlings, today we stand at a crossroads in our history. The Galactic Council has recognized our sovereignty and has offered us the opportunity to join their alliance as equals. This is a testament to the strength of our spirit, the resilience of our people, and the indomitable power of our shared humanity." The crowd erupted in cheers, their voices raised in a chorus of triumph. Johnson raised a hand, silencing the din, and continued, his gaze sweeping across the faces of his countrymen. "But let us not forget the challenges that lie ahead. The Galactic Council may have acknowledged our independence, but they will still seek to exert their influence over us. We must remain vigilant, we must continue to strengthen our defenses, and we must be prepared to defend our freedom at any cost." The people roared their approval, their fists pumping the air in a defiant salute. Johnson smiled, his expression filled with a mixture of pride and determination. "Today, we take our rightful place among the stars. We are the masters of our own fate, and the future of humanity is ours to shape. Let us go forth with courage, with conviction, and with the unwavering spirit that has carried us this far." As the crowd erupted in thunderous applause, the people of Earth knew that their struggle was far from over. But in that moment, they were united, they were proud, and they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, secure in the knowledge that they were the masters of their own destiny.